Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we've got a story that'll grip your soul, a clash of pride, a twist that'll drop your jaw, and a lesson so real it feels like a movie playing out live. Picture this. A legend walks into a fancy restaurant, mocked by a waitress who thinks he's a nobody, until he drops a bombshell that turns the whole place upside down. It's Southern justice with a heart of gold. If you love tales of respect and redemption, stick around. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let's dive in. You won't want to miss this. It was a sticky Saturday night in Savannah, Georgia, the air thick with humidity and the faint buzz of cicadas drifting through the historic streets. The Magnolia Room stood proud downtown, its colonial front glowing under gas lamps. A beacon of old-school charm meets new money swagger. Inside, crystal glasses clinked, bourbon's smoky scent curled from the bar, and the warm aroma of shrimp and grits teased the senses. This was the place where Savannah's elite rubbed elbows, from old cotton barons in pressed linens to flashy tech bros snapping pics of their $50 plates for the gram. Clint Eastwood eased through the door, boots scuffing the oak floor. In a faded blue cotton shirt and worn jeans, he looked more like a guy off a fishing dock than a dining room VIP. He slid into his corner table by the window, four side squares mossy oaks swaying outside in the dusky glow. "Bourbon neat," he rasped to a passing busboy, voice low and steady, that gravelly tone cutting through the chatter like a blade. 8 months back, he'd bought this joint on the down low. No fuss, just a deal to keep its heart beating. His rule? Act like he's nobody special. That's how you spot the real deal, he reckoned, by how they treat the regular Joes, the ones who don't flash cash or clout. Savannah Brooks worked the floor like she owned it, a 26-year-old Atlanta transplant with big dreams and a bigger attitude. Her uniform hugged tight, auburn hair slicked back in a perfect bun. She flashed a smile at a table of suited hotshots, ordering crab bisque and laughing too loud. Then she saw Clint. Her lip curled. "Who's this guy?" she hissed, loud enough for Tanner Cole to catch it from the kitchen. Tanner, a cocky sous chef with a permanent smirk and a knack for trouble, peeked out over the counter. "Lost tourist? Looks like he's here for the free bread." Savannah snorted, adjusting her apron. "This ain't Highway 17, Tanner. He's killing the vibe with that thrift store getup." Tanner grinned wider. "Show him the door, save, give us a laugh." But he can't even tip. Walter Tate polished a glass behind the bar, his silver hair glinting under the chandelier's soft light. At 62, he'd run this place forever, a Savannah native who lived for its hospitality code. Every soul's a king here, no matter what. He clocked Clint right away, same as always when the man slipped in to check things out. Walter knew the drill. No fanfare, just bourbon and a nod. But Savannah's snark hit his ears like a sour note, and his stomach sank. "Oh, Lordy," he muttered, setting the glass down with a clink. She was green, all city sass and no roots, and tonight she was picking the wrong fight, a fight she couldn't win. Miss Beatrice Holt sipped her Pinot near Clint, pearls shining against her silk shawl as she watched with keen eyes. A widow with deep ties to Savannah's past, she met him on a film set here decades ago, recognized that steely gaze instantly, even under the dim glow of the dining room. "Well, now," she whispered, smirking into her glass. "This'll be a show worth watching." She stayed quiet, sensing the storm brewing, her fingers tapping lightly on the table like she was counting down to the chaos. Grady Lawson shuffled past with a tray of dirty dishes, his apron stained with grease and his hands rough from crab traps off Tybee Island. At 19, he was the youngest on staff, a local kid who'd landed this gig to keep his family afloat after a rough season. He'd grown up on Clint's films, those late nights watching Unforgiven with his old man, dreaming of something bigger. When Clint sat down tonight, Grady's heart skipped. "That's him," he mumbled, stealing glances while stacking plates. Hearing Savannah's jab and Tanner's cackle, his tray shook in his grip. "She don't know who he is," he whispered, voice tight with frustration. He wanted to speak up. Heck, he needed to, but Savannah's sharp tongue had cut him down before, and the sting still lingered. Savannah squared her shoulders, tossing a final glance at Tanner for backup. "Watch this," she said with a smirk, her heels clicking sharp against the floor like a countdown to trouble. The room's hum dipped, a few heads turning as the air thickened with tension. Clint sipped his bourbon slow, that half-smile playing on his lips, like he'd seen this scene before and knew the ending by heart. Walter gripped the bar's edge, muttering a silent prayer. Beatrice raised a brow, her glass hovering midair. Grady held his breath, tray trembling in his hands. Something big was coming, and it was gonna hit hard, real hard. Savannah Brooks squared her shoulders and marched toward Clint Eastwood's table, her heels striking the oak floor like gunfire in the hushed dining room of the Magnolia Room. The air buzzed with tension, thick as the Savannah, heat pressing against the windows. She stopped sharp, hands on hips, her auburn bun glinting under the chandelier's glow. Clint sat there, bourbon glass cradled in one hand, that half-smile still dancing on his lips, like he'd seen this showdown coming a mile away. The room's chatter dropped to a murmur, forks pausing midair, eyes darting her way. She didn't care. This was her turf, and this old guy in his thrift store threads? He was about to learn his place. "Excuse me, sir," Savannah said, her voice dripping with fake honey, loud enough to carry across the restaurant. "I hate to interrupt your little drink there, but this table's reserved for actual diners. Maybe you'd be happier at the bar across the street. Cheaper drinks, less fuss. Suits you better." She flashed a smirk, glancing back at Tanner Cole, who leaned out from the kitchen with a grin, egging her on. "Yes, Save." Tanner hollered, voice cutting through the silence. "Tell him the shrimp's $50 a plate. He might faint." A few of the suited hotshots at the bar snickered, phones already out, sensing a scene worth filming. Clint set his glass down slow, the clink echoing like a gavel. He looked up, eyes locking onto Savannah's with that steely calm that had faced down 100 Hollywood tough guys. "I like it here," he said, voice low, steady. "Bring me the shrimp and grits." Simple, direct, like he hadn't heard a word of her venom. Savannah's smirk faltered, just for a heartbeat, then hardened. She crossed her arms, stepping closer, her shadow falling across his table. "Oh, bless your heart," she drawled, southern sarcasm on full blast. "You think this is some roadside diner? This is the Magnolia Room. We've got standards you clearly don't meet. Look at you. That shirt's older than my granddaddy's tractor." Tanner let out a loud "ha" from the kitchen, slapping the counter. "She's got you there, Pops. Better shuffle back to the farm." The laughter spread, a ripple of cruel amusement from the younger crowd, their gold watches glinting as they leaned in. Savannah fed off it, her confidence swelling. She leaned down, voice dropping to a mock whisper, sharp as a blade. "Let me spell it out, sir. Our chef's menu? It's exclusive, pricey, not for folks who look like they fish for their supper. So why don't you save us both the trouble and head out? Doors that way." She pointed, triumphant, her manicured nail slicing the air. Grady Lawson stood frozen a few tables over, his tray of dirty dishes trembling in his grip. His knuckles whitened, the rough calluses from hauling crab traps stark against the polished silverware. He'd idolized Clint since he was a kid, those late nights watching Dirty Harry with his daddy, dreaming of grit and guts. Now, hearing Savannah tear into him, Grady's chest burned. "She can't talk to him like that," he muttered, barely audible, his voice shaking with a mix of awe and outrage. He took a half-step forward, tray wobbling. "Miss Savannah," maybe his voice caught his throat, "don't do this," but came out a whisper she ignored. She spun on him, eyes flashing. "Grady, shut it. Go stack plates. That's all you're good for. This ain't your business." Her words hit like a slap, and Grady flinched, stepping back, shame flooding his face, though his eyes stayed locked on Clint, desperate for a sign. Miss Beatrice Holt set her Pinot down with a soft clink, her pearls catching the light as she straightened in her chair. She'd seen plenty in her years. Cotton Kings rise and fall, Savannah's tides shift, but this was a disgrace. "Young lady," she called out, her voice sweet yet sharp, cutting through the tension like a church bell. "You might want to watch that tone. Some folks in here deserve more respect than you're giving." Savannah whipped around, irritation flaring. "Thanks for the advice, ma'am," she snapped, but I've got this under control. Mind your wine. Beatrice's lips pursed, her gaze flicking to Clint with a knowing glint. She'd met him on that film set years back, knew the steel behind that quiet, and she wasn't about to let this girl ruin the night. Walter Tate moved fast now, weaving through the tables, his silver hair a blur under the lights. He'd heard enough. Savannah's voice rang out like a siren, and every word was a nail in her coffin. "Savannah, ease up," he said, low and firm, reaching her side. His hand hovered near her elbow, not touching, just warning. She shook him off, eyes blazing. "Ease up. Walter, this guy's a joke. Look at him. He doesn't belong here. Our Real guests deserve better than some bum taking up space." Walter's face tightened, his southern drawl thickening with strain. "You don't know what you're doing, girl. Stop this now." But Savannah was too far gone, drunk on her own bravado. She turned back to Clint, planting her hands on his table, leaning in close. "Last chance, old man," she hissed, voice rising to a near shout. "Get up and go, or I'm calling security to drag you out." She grabbed the phone from the hostess stand nearby, jabbing the buttons with a smirk, her fingers steady despite the fire in her eyes. "This ain't your backwoods bar. This is my house, and I say who stays." The room went dead silent, a collective gasp sucking the air dry. The hotshots stopped filming, mouths open. Tanner's laugh died in his throat, eyes wide from the kitchen. Grady's tray slipped an inch, a spoon clattering to the floor with a sharp ping. Beatrice clutched her glass, her knuckles white. Walter froze, whispering, "Lord, no." Clint didn't flinch. He leaned back in his chair, slow as molasses, that half-smile spreading just a touch wider. He took a final sip of bourbon, set the glass down with deliberate care, and looked up at Savannah, right through her, like he could see the reckoning coming. "Your house, huh?" he said, voice soft but heavy, each word landing like a stone. "Funny you should say that." He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and pressed a single button. The call connected, his gravelly tone calm as ever. "Calvin, bring the papers. Now." He hung up, eyes never leaving hers. Savannah blinked, a flicker of doubt cracking her mask. The room held its breath, teetering on the edge of something explosive, and nobody, not even her, was ready for what came next. The Magnolia Room stood still, a breathless hush gripping the air as Savannah Brooks leaned over Clint Eastwood's table, her defiant "my house" hanging like a misfired shot. Clint's phone call, "Bring the papers. Now," echoed in the silence, a quiet storm brewing. Tanner Cole's smirk vanished in the kitchen, his spatula dropping with a clatter. Grady Lawson's tray shook, his knuckles white. Miss Beatrice Holt set her Pinot down, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Walter Tate stepped closer, muttering, "Here it comes. Lord help us." Every head turned, the hotshots at the bar lowering their phones, sensing the shift. Savannah's bravado flickered, but she held her ground, until Clint spoke. "Your house, huh?" Clint said, voice low and gravelly, leaning forward with elbows on the table. His steely gaze pierced her, unflinching. "Let's set that straight." Footsteps rang out, sharp, deliberate, and Calvin Reese strode in, a wiry accountant in a wrinkled suit, clutching a leather folder. He slid it to Clint with a nod, stepping back with a sly grin. Clint flipped it open, revealing crisp papers, and tapped the top sheet. "Read it," he said, sliding it toward her. Bold ink stared back. "Clint Eastwood, owner, The Magnolia Room, July 2024. A gasp swept the room, forks clinking as they hit plates, eyes widening in disbelief. Savannah's knees buckled, catching the table's edge to steady herself, her hands trembling as her face drained of color. What is this?" she stammered, voice cracking like thin ice. Clint didn't flinch. "8 months ago, I bought this place," he said slow and steady. "Not for the glitz or the big spenders. For what it was. 40 years back, I walked in here, nobody special, broke, wearing a shirt like this. The old lady running it sat me down, served me shrimp and grits, no questions. She said, 'Son, a man's worth ain't in his pockets. It's in his eyes.' That's real hospitality, Savannah. Not this." He waved at her uniform, her attitude. Not this show you're putting on. Tanner ducked behind the counter, whispering, "Oh, man, we're done." The kitchen staff peeked out, jaws slack. The hotshots muttered, "That's Clint Eastwood?" Grady's tray hit the floor with a loud crash, plate shattering, but he didn't care. "I knew it," he burst out, voice shaking with awe, his rough hands clenched in fists of triumph. Miss Beatrice chuckled, raising her glass. "Told you, girl," she called, her voice cutting through. "Some folks are worth more than your fancy manners." Savannah's tears spilled now, her world unraveling as the room watched, riveted. Clint rose to his feet, slow and deliberate, his presence filling the space like a scene from one of his films. "I could fire you right now," he said, voice firm but steady. "Send you packing for that stunt. But this place ain't about kicking folks down. It's about lifting them up." He turned to Grady, who snapped straight, eyes wide. "You knew me. Saw it right off, didn't you? Tomorrow, you start as a waiter. We need people who get it. Respect ain't tied to a suit or a fat tip." Grady's face lit up, a grin breaking through. "Yes, sir. Thank you. I won't let you down, I swear." He faced Savannah again, softer now. "You've got a choice. Walk out tonight, find some shiny spot that loves flash over substance. Or stay. Learn from Walter, learn from Grady, and figure out what matters here. Your call." The room held its breath, every eye on her. She wiped her tears, hands shaking, and whispered, "I'll stay." "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know." Clint nodded once, final. "Good. Walter, Grady's her teacher now." Walter exhaled, smiling. "You got it, Mr. Eastwood. She's in good hands." Beatrice started clapping, slow, then strong, her pearls bouncing. "Well played, Clint," she called, and the applause spread, warm and real, from the old-timers to the stunned hotshots. Clint sat back, picking up his bourbon. "Shrimp still coming?" he asked, dry as ever. Walter laughed. "On the house, sir, coming right up." The tension broke, laughter rippling as Savannah slipped to the back, humbled but changed. Grady stood tall, ready for tomorrow. Clint sipped his drink, a man who proved some things never go out of style. Hey folks, that's our tale. If this story of respect and second chances hit home, smash that like button, share it with your crew, and drop a comment. Ever been judged wrong and turned it around? Let's keep these stories alive. Subscribe and hit that bell for more. Thanks for watching. You're the best. See you next time.